task for today on this very windy day is to mount all of the electrical components underneath the tank. We have the M.Unit and all of the VAPE ignition and charging system parts, the control unit, the ignition coils, the relay and the regulator rectifier, which all has to fit underneath the tank. I've already spent a while to just figure out where things should go, so let me show you. This might be a little bit hard to tell because I sticked everything on there with black duct tape, but let me walk you through this. On this side we have the ignition coils because these need to be connected to the control unit, which sits on the other side. Because on the other side right here there is a bracket that we can use, so I might be able to just fabricate something that then goes onto the other side where we can mount the ignition coils too. And I've used these tubes that I had lying around so I can see where the ignition wires would go. The regulator rectifier now sits at the front. I first had it in between here, but now with the two parts on the opposite sides, we didn't have enough space for the regulator rectifier within this triangle. We just need to fabricate something that goes up and around. And then lastly, we have the M.Unit, which will go right here on top of the frame, because here the tank has a big cavity, because in the original setup, the front brake master cylinder sits underneath the tank right here. The dimensions of the first bracket for the ignition coils are perfect for us to use this 40 by 40 millimeter square tubing. And I love to use square tubing because you have very sharp and precise bends. So let's see what we can make out of this. Well, I just lost one of my power circuits, so it's a little bit darker now, but I think I can manage. I've moved the ignition coils a little bit up and tucked it away underneath the top part of the frame because the wall was slightly touching the tank. I think it would have worked, but like this, it's out of the way. So we now just have to make a little extension piece that goes in here. Alright, so that's bracket 1 done. Now it's on to the opposite side, but before I start fabricating that bracket, I quickly want to 3D print a prototype because it's a little bit more complex and I want to make sure that everything fits. So let's quickly jump into Fusion 360. While I was waiting for the prototype to be printed, I started to install the VAPE stator in the front. And while doing that, I noticed that maybe we can actually install the advanced unit inside the front engine compartment, because look at this. This part right here is where the diode plate was located. So we have 4 mounting points already. So with these 4 mounting points, we can maybe tuck away the control unit right here. Another great advantage would be the wire management, because these 3 wires need to be connected to the end of this big wiring loom. VAPE states that you shouldn't shorten the wires, but I don't know why you would need 2 meters of wires. So maybe that might be okay to shorten them. I'll have to ask them. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I'm going to make a quick prototype to see if the control unit actually fits inside and the front engine cover still fits on there. So let's see how that goes. That fits very well and the lid still fits on, so that would be the perfect spot to mount this. The only real thing that I need to check with VAPE now, and I've just sent them an email, is whether it's okay to have the control unit mounted so close to the alternator in the same compartment. I want to make sure that there are no interference issues, so I'm waiting until I hear back from them, and then we can decide whether we use this or we use the prototype bracket that I'm quickly going to show you right now. The prototype consists of 2 parts. This is the front bracket where the control unit will sit. And then I have the second bracket, which will also make enough room for this long plate to clear the frame, and this is where the regulator rectifier will go. All right, I've just heard back from VAPE, and unfortunately we're not able to mount the control unit in the front engine compartment because there might be interference issues. So we are going to move forward with the original bracket. While I was just double checking my prototype setup before we actually start building it, I noticed that I don't have a spot for the relay yet. But then I noticed, oh, okay, wait a sec. I do have all of the Deutsch pins that I want to install somewhere. So I need a spot for those as well. It's a tight fit. I think I found the solution for both the plugs and the relay. The good thing about this setup is, at least how I imagine it, is that all of the wires from the output side of the M-Unit will go back first and then splice or reroute to the front to the different plugs. So that will hopefully make for a very clean look on the M-Unit and also be functional. I've just designed a proper version for this little bracket that is in the printer right now. So that will be done by the time that I've fabricated all of the rest of the brackets. I'm very happy with that solution. Now, finally, we can start fabricating. I just noticed that unfortunately I lost my compressor as well as the power circuit. So that was destroyed, and then 2 of my video lights. It's very unfortunate, for one, financially, but also because the die grinder became such a staple tool in my workflow. Now it's back to the angle grinder, and I somehow need to replace my compressor. Well, what can I say? We've just hit a little speed bump right at the end of the M-Unit bracket. The thing is, I've used these weldable threads and they are quite delicate, and because the hole wasn't quite precise, I had a gap that I need to fill with some filler rod that created too much heat and the thread deformed, which made the screw get stuck. But it's not too bad because we're already back on track. I've just made a second version. This time, to be on the safe side, I'm gonna use rivet nuts. So let's put those in. The 2 main brackets are done. Now we just need mounting points for the Deutsch pin connectors. And I think with the frame bracket that I've 3D printed in the meantime, we might get a very clean solution for all 4 of the connectors. Okay, so this is the final setup. On the left side we have the ignition coil, on the top the M.Unit and the 2 plugs. This one is for the headlight and this one is for M button and indicators. And then on the other side we have the regulator rectifier sitting right here in the front, so it gets good airflow. The control unit right behind it, and then again 2 DTM Deutsch pin connectors. This one has 6 pins and this one has 2 pins. And the placement right here is perfect because the speedo wires are just long enough to reach this side, and then I can just continue on that side and go to the M.Unit. In the back right here we have the horn nicely tucked away, and behind that sits the relay. That is one step closer to getting the bike fired up, which I'm getting very excited about and a little bit anxious because I hope it just comes back to life after 3 years. We have to see how that goes. So yeah, if you want to follow along for that, hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, then you'll enjoy that one as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.